Yeah. The first is, I think you need to develop a view across the business of what it is that will be reasonable in terms of requiring workers to monitor and respond to communications outside of hours. We should identify the basis of that reasonableness as well, if they're working international roles, if there is urgency to checking overnight, if there is, as you know, they're kind of a highly paid, high performance subset. On top of that, there should be the psychosocial health and safety thinking attached to that. So where there is a requirement to work longer hours, or we think it's reasonable that they work longer hours, what are we doing to actually mitigate any risk to the individual worker from working in that role? Looking at, for example, the risk of burnout. What are we doing to mitigate those risks? A key part of responding to these laws will be making sure that decision makers as well are trained, are given training and are aware of these new reforms. There is potential for exposure to general protections claims if it is alleged that a decision maker has made a decision or taken adverse action against a worker, including because of their exercise of this right. So it can introduce some complexity in those decision making. So if we're talking about the downside of this type of reform, it does create complexity for employers in making decisions. So there will need to be some education to management in relation to these laws. As you said, we could be looking at job descriptions and employment contracts to make sure that we are clear about expectations of communications after hours. There should be a process as well in place. So reviewing our policies and procedures, including, how to resolve any issues with communications after hours internally, before it gets to the commission. So we should make sure that the policies and procedures internally are reviewed. There might be steps that we take which are, what we would refer to as controls, I guess, in the safety space. What controls can we put in place in relation to this? Should we be adding a sign off to an email saying you don't need to respond to this straight away? Would there be a process in place where managers are working long hours because for whatever reason it works for them, they're doing flexible work, where they actually delay the sending of some of those communications? Are there communications that we need to have with suppliers and clients to really push back sometimes on those demands for responsiveness overnight? So I think starting that process now, if and really leveraging some of that work that may have been done in the business in relation to psychosocial health and safety will put you in a better position when these laws do take